Okay. Are we live or are we live? Huh? I can't tell. Tora? Kitty Catty? I believe we're live. Say hi to your adoring fans. Say good morning. Okay. Tora's mad at me for oversleeping and failing to properly worship the kitty cat. Huh. Okay. Up, down. I overslept because I did not sleep well last night. Gee, I wonder why. Tora knows, don't you? But this morning's show is not about the reason most of us are not sleeping well. No one left behind. Yeah, right. Something our politicians don't seem to understand. Yes, Tora? Kitty treats. Well, last week I did mention a book, could not think of the name. Or I could think of what I was talking about, but not the words to describe it. So this week I'll look at the book. Let me see where I put it. Here we go. Uh-oh. Covered in dust. Secrets of Rennes le Chateaux. Tora, it's your fault that there's glare all over the computer screen because you ripped the curtains. Secrets of Rennes le Chateaux. Let me see. Cats. Can't do much about the glare except turn the computer a little. Yeah, that's a little better. Secrets of Rennes le Chateaux by Lionel and Patricia Fanthorpe. Yes, not necessarily the best and most reliable researchers. Hi, Howard. But, he could do worse. Lionel Fanthorpe. Got it. Sorry, I rushed to get on the computer because I slept late. And then found that YouTube had changed a few things about how you start a show. Let's look up Lionel Fanthorpe. Lionel Fanthorpe. Oh, my. Let me see. No, wait a minute. He's still alive and living in Dereham, Dereham, United Kingdom. 86 years old. And retired British priest and entertainer. Wow, that's Wikipedia. A prose by any other pseudonym. He wrote 150 pulp fiction novels in the 1950s under various names, in other words, pseudonyms, pen names, while he was a priest. And of course, they aren't telling me. I'm probably Anglican since he was in England, but there are other churches in England. Anyway, see, The Secrets of Rennes le Chateaux was published in 1992. And there are worse books about Rennes le Chateaux. His is not the worst by any means. The one I have is the 97th printing. So I imagine it was popular. This is not the one. Oh, yes, it is. It has photos. You could do worse than Lionel Fanthorpe. Anyway, Rennes le Chateaux is a small town in France. Oh, wow. Wow. There's another book somewhere that isn't out at hand or to hand because I didn't think it was a very good book. This one's not bad. But, oh, now I have 2 cigarettes lit. Oh, that one went out. Okay. I'm confused. Anyway, the title of my video promises Rennes le Chateaux. So naturally, as soon as I saw the spine of the book in my bookcase, I went, oh yeah. And then just now it's like, wow, that's it. Father Saunière in Rennes le Chateaux suddenly had a whole bunch of money. Nobody knows why. But they say he was selling indulgences in the approximately 1890 to 1920, to the end of World War I. Who was buying indulgences? I thought that was a thing of the Middle Ages. More adventurous researchers say that he found a treasure. Well, this book, it's full of information. It isn't, thin. It's got lots of pages, but man, it doesn't focus so much on the woo-woo. And I love the woo-woo. I mean, no doubt about it. It's just that it isn't necessarily true or even if it is true, it just could be dangerous. Okay. I'll tell you the main reason I like Lionel Fanthorpe. When he was on Coast to Coast, I think with Art Bell, I just loved listening to his accent. I love British accents anyway. Scots, Irish, Welsh, sure. And of course the London BBC accent. I love the Cockney accent, but I can't understand a word they're saying. And sometimes I have that problem with the Scots and Irish and Welsh. But hey, this is not just woo-woo. It's got a lot of good info. The Rennes le Chateaux and its area. The history of Rennes le Chateaux. Now, supposedly, this Father Saunier was going to Paris and buying artwork all of a sudden after being assigned to a rundown church building in a poor parish where they really couldn't afford much. Oh, hi, Jen. Well, he suddenly had all kinds of money to restore the church and live in luxury and help out his parishioners with money that they needed. Yeah, maybe he sold indulgences like the, is it the parson? Or I guess one of the characters in Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. From around the year 1300 and before. I think Chaucer died in 1305, something like that. Anyway, if you sinned and you had a lot of money, you could pay a priest to forgive your sin, to give you an indulgence and allow you to continue sinning, like adultery, cheating on your spouse. Usually they were men buying these indulgences. So the church wouldn't kick you out because that could be really seriously bad for you in the Middle Ages. I can't imagine indulgences being so important at the end of the 1800s and the beginning of the 1900s. I don't know. It's more likely that Saunier was blackmailing wealthy people. He had information on them. Okay. Is my stream... It isn't like, what do you call it? Buffering, is it? I'm assuming I can be heard even though I'm not making much sense because I didn't sleep well. The history of Rennes le Chateaux and the area. All right, let's just... Not far from the Nauruze Gap, which separates the Eastern Pyrenees from France's Central Massif, lies the village of Rennes le Chateaux. Ooh, I love the way he writes. Mediterranean chestnut, Hermes oak, and cork oak all flourish here in the Eastern Pyrenees. All right. So that's where Rennes le Chateaux is. History of Rennes le Chateaux. in the shadowy interior of Chateau Haupoul, Hautpoul. It's French. It's pronounced Haupoul or Hautpoul. Doesn't have to make sense. It's French. It's almost as bad as people tell me English is. But I grew up speaking English. So it's easy for me. French, not so much. My computer's crooked. Oh, well. Oh, I see. All right. I don't know where I read that. I'm now in the shadowy interior of Chateau Haupoul. Henri Fatin showed us his fascinating collection of axe heads, scrapers, and other Stone Age artifacts, which he and his father had found in and around Rennes le Chateaux over many years. Stone Age men lived here, hunted here, raised their families here, fought and died here before pyramids rose in the Valley of the Kings. Why am I not quite coughing, but rattling? The first inhabitants of the Rennes area were here before Abraham left Ur of the Chaldees. When the architects and engineers of Stonehenge were raising their impressive trilithons near Salisbury, men were raising dolmens, cromlechs, and menhirs near what would one day be Rennes le Chateaux. So it's near that area of southern France where you find standing stones quite similar to the henges of England, most famously Stonehenge. But frankly, a lot more of them in southwestern France. The Eastern Pyrenees are like the border between France and Spain, where many wars have been fought between France and Spain. And of course, Charlemagne crossed the Pyrenees to do battle with Spain. He was really fighting the Basques. And to this day, there are Basques who are more French and Basques who are more Spanish, mostly living in those mountains. Trying to remember the poetic, I don't know if you'd call it a ballad or what, that they made me read in literature class in English translation about the hero who died fighting for Charlemagne. Can't quite remember the name. It's not El Cid. It's someone else. All right. I'm skipping a bit. Some Celtic groups were referred to as Galatai, from which the familiar New Testament Galatians is derived. So when Paul wrote to the Galatians, those were the people of France. Yes, Paul spread the gospel in France. He didn't hang around in Jerusalem. Okay, from which the familiar New Testament word Galatians is derived. From the 2nd century BC, they were also known as Galli. Galli, that's what Caesar called them, which gave rise to the more familiar term Gauls, Gauls. Let's see. I learned to recite just the first line of one of Julius Caesar's writings about the Roman wars. They're very dry history written by a general in Latin. Omnia Gallia in tres parte divisere est. All of Gaul is divided into 3 parts. And that was basically France and Germany. And Spain. Or was it Eastern Europe? I forget. I don't know how Eastern Europe fitted in. Probably not Gauls, something else. Bulgars or something. All right, now, skipping. It was the Romans who took this Celtish territory and southern France. Somehow the Gauls came to be called Celts. Don't ask me. They're supposedly different people than the Gauls, but whatever. The Celts brought in the Druids and the Druidic teachings. Okay. It was the Romans who took this Celtish territory, and southern France soon became a popular part of the Roman Empire. See, even then it was a tourist spot. And skipping down, it is possible that some of the treasures of Solomon's temple were taken in 591 BC. You know, those pesky Babylonians under Nebuchadnezzar. It is highly probable that most of the remainder of the treasure. Oh, okay, this is right before Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians. Some of the treasures of Solomon's temple were taken. Doesn't say by whom, but there is this legend of a, what does it say? Secret Visigothic hiding place at Rennes. Ah, the Romans might have taken treasure from the temple. But no, I'm not hanging with these dates. The Romans couldn't have been around in 591 BC. Trust me, they weren't in France that early. They came earlier. But anyway, it is highly probable that most of the remainder of the treasure of Solomon's temple was looted by Babylonians under Nebuchadnezzar in 586 BC. That's 5 years after 591. The Romans came later and might have taken some of that treasure. They did conquer all kinds of peoples. Detailed accounts of the destruction can be found. In where did my eyes keep wandering? 2 Kings 25 and Jeremiah 25. In 169 BC, Antiochus Epiphanes, a descendant of Alexander the Great's Seleucid successors, stole not only the readily visible treasure, such as the gold on the pillars and the vessels from the altars, but he also took, in quotes, the hidden treasures, end quote, as well. The episode is recorded in 1st Maccabees, chapter 1, verses 21 to 23. Okay, Maccabees is one of those books that are not in the Bible. I can't remember them being in the Catholic Bible that has the Apocrypha. I always stumble on that word. I have to go through a mental inventory of labels. Maybe it's in there. I don't think so. Anyway, the books of the Maccabees are readily available. They are not hidden, but nobody reads them. And sadly, I haven't read them yet. In AD 70, Titus, then a general, later the emperor of Rome, destroyed much of Jerusalem. His triumphal arch shows his men sacking the city and carrying away the Menorah, the famous 7-branched golden candlestick. Now that has to be the one in the temple, and I'll tell you why. What we call peoples and languages of the Gauls, the Galatians of the New Testament. So yeah, there's Gauls in the British Isles too. I'm of the opinion that the Celts are the same as the Gauls, but really solid academics will differ with me, because the Druids were Celtic, not Gallic. I don't know. Let's see. Okay, so the 7-branched menorah has to be the one from the temple. Good Jewish people will not have a 7-branched menorah in the home. Today, a menorah in the home will most likely have 9 branches for Hanukkah. When the Maccabees were cleansing the temple, the oil lasted for 8 days. So they have 1 central candle with 4 smaller candles on each side for a total of 9 for Hanukkah. But the 7-branched menorah is only in the temple. It would be like really bad, sacrilege even, to have a 7-branch menorah anywhere but the temple. Now, sometimes they have a menorah with 5 candles, 5 branches, but never 7, only in the temple. So if Titus in 70 AD, when the Romans crushed a Jewish rebellion, the menorah he took away had 7 branches. Where was it, and where was the rest of the Jewish treasure taken by the Romans in 410, when Alaric the Visigoth entered Rome? Alaric was a Visigoth, a Western Goth, probably French or German, who was a general. Well, he earned his way up to general after the Romans drafted him for their. He had a claim to the throne. They should have chosen him as emperor of Rome when the previous one died. But the Senate chose someone else. So Alaric marched into Rome, not only with Gallic warriors, but with Roman legions, and took Rome by force. He soon died. Alaric died shortly afterwards at Consenza, then known as Consentia, and was buried in the Visigothic manner. And skipping down, it is rather misleading to write of Alaric taking Rome. He had made 2 previous unsuccessful attempts to capture the city, and it was only because the gates were treacherously opened for him on August 24th. Yes, guys, this is the anniversary of Alaric becoming the Emperor of Rome. And he succeeded. He didn't have a great military career. He lost more battles than he won. Anyway, skipping a whole bunch more, yet another fish divinity parallel. Remember the fish sign? Meant a lot to Philip K. Dick, as an early Christian symbol. Well, it actually began before Christianity. Lots of fish divinities. But Lionel Fanthorpe writes here, and Patricia, his wife, are these siren speculations luring us dangerously close to the treacherous rocks and shoals, characteristics of the shores of von Däniken land? It's von Däniken. Everybody calls him von Däniken or von Däniken. It's von Däniken. The guy's German. So Stanthorpe's making fun of von Däniken's speculations. I take his speculations seriously as speculations. Okay, I'm going back to the previous page because this is the heart of the mystery, even though it isn't mysterious yet. Menorah, who gave his name to the dynasty, was Clodian's son, or rather, according to the legends, partly his son and partly the son of something else, the Merovingians, who were murdered by the Carolingians. Okay, back to the book. In their anxiety to substantiate their very questionable hypothesis about Jesus and Mary Magdalene in the Holy Blood and the Holy Grail, Bagent, Lee, and Lincoln suggest that the legends concerning the miraculous circumstances surrounding Meroving's conception are allegorical or symbolic representations of an intermarriage between Clodian's line and a very important and mysterious family from overseas, the descendants of Jesus via Mary Magdalene. The derivation of the name Meroving is interesting and may even be significant as far as the legends are concerned. Mer gives the idea of both mother and sea, S-E-A, like ocean, while ove has the same root as egg. There are etymological connections with ovis, meaning sheep, and thus a possible link with Poussin's Shepherds of Arcadia. Ovo carries the sense of triumphing, exulting, or celebrating a victory by loud shouts and cheers. So, Fanthorpe does go through these interesting links to the woo-woo in the history of Rennes le Chateaux. The possibility of buried treasure, possibly from the temple. let me see where that, well, it isn't a very good photo, but the Shepherds of Arcadia is a painting by Poussin. I've forgotten Poussin's first name. A French painter. Father Saunière, who suddenly became wealthy while living in the poor parish of Rennes le Chateaux, bought that painting. And nearby there's this tomb that just could have been the one in the painting. It's hard to see in that photo. There's 4 shepherds hovering around a tomb with strange words written on it. All right, let's resort to the index. Let me see. He has no use for some of the more careless researchers. My problem with Bajan, Lee, and Lincoln and the Holy Blood and the Holy Grail is that they don't have good references. You know, like Fanthorpe's book has all these footnotes and stuff, and images of relevant documents. Okay, Arcadia. Nope. It's not going to be in the index. Let's look for Saunière. Béranger Saunière. Most of the info about him begins on page 136, well into the rather scholarly description with just enough of the woo-woo to intrigue you without going off the deep end. Now, it's highly likely that Mary Magdalene came to France after the crucifixion. She might even have had a child, but there's really no good evidence that she married Jesus. Béranger Saunière. Corruptio optimi pessima. Corruption, the ultimate something. I don't remember Latin that well. Nobody uses it anymore. The Rennes le Chateaux enigma not only involves men of mystery, like the alchemists and Rosicrucians, and ancient noble families like the Habsburgs, it embroils a surprising number of priests as well. Some of them were almost as mysterious in their own ways as Flamel, Paracelsus, and Tesla. Yes, good old Nikola Tesla. Béranger Saunière, the best known of them, was born in the tiny hilltop village of Montazels, close to Cuisa, in the high valley of the Aude, on April 11th, 1852. And let's see, 1874, Béranger passed the entrance exam for the Grand Diocesan Seminary, where he studied for 5 years, and blah, blah, blah. Skipping a ways, in 1897, Saunière created the Terrain Fleury wall decoration at the south of the church. A flowery land, Terrain Fleury, near the confessional, and at the same time the very peculiar Bénitier, that's holy water stoop, was built. According to Émile Saunière, the grimacing demon at the base of this curious arrangement is meant to represent or personify republicanism. You see, Saunier was a monarchist, and here was France becoming more and more secular, and more for voting for your leaders and not having a king. In 18, he just suddenly had wealth after being assigned to this poor parish. In 1899, Saunier purchased various parcels of land around the church and presbytery, all in the name of Marie Denarnaud, his young housekeeper. Well, yeah, if he had it in his own name, the church would inherit it when he died. He didn't want that. Massive building projects went on for the next few years. The Villa Bethania, the Magdalen Tower, the orangeries and promenades. Yes, orange groves, orangeries, promenades, walkways. Money was obviously coming in from somewhere to pay for all these expensive projects. But from where? Unfortunately, on January 28th, 1908, Saunier fell foul of the new bishop, the unpleasantly inquisitive, bureaucratic, and persistent de Beausejour. Monsignor Billard had been an ideal bishop, a good and tolerant man, prepared to live and let live as far as Saunier was concerned. Although Béranger, and remember that's Saunier's first name, Béranger Saunier fought off Beausejour successfully most of the time with the nonchalant contempt that such a bishop richly deserved. There can be little doubt that Beausejour and his bureaucratic henchmen in the diocesan hierarchy eventually wore Saunier down and were largely responsible for the deterioration of his once robust health. I can't stand it. I'm going to the back with the, what you call it, the, do they have a good picture? Oh, of course not. Not that I can easily find. There's all kinds of codes and alphabets in this book. I'll just give you an example. What is this? Hebrew letters and a cipher. On the bottom is a cipher based on Hebrew letters. And since I always complain that people on YouTube don't hold the images up long enough for me to get a good look at them, I'll hold them till my arms are too tired. And he shows us the Hebrew alphabet and where they got those symbols. For example, Daleth, the letter D, is a door or doorway. Pretty much the same thing in the Roman alphabet. Trying to hold it so as a person could see it. I definitely need a better setup if I'm going to keep doing these things. Here is I'm not sure what this is. It's apparently one of the documents that people have tried to decipher Sonier's death. I can't get a good light on this. Okay, never mind. It kind of looks like Greek letters, but apparently it's a coded message. It's a cipher. And one of the texts they found appears to be an inaccurately copied version of an episode copied in Luke 6, verses 1 to 4, and Matthew 12, verses 1 to 4, and Mark 2, verses 23 to 26. Jesus and his disciples are walking through the fields on the Sabbath day, rubbing the ears of corn in their hands and eating the grains. Now remember, folks, that Jesus was not eating American corn. It wasn't maize. It was possibly wheat, possibly rye, possibly oats, but not American corn, not maize. The Pharisees criticized them for working, that is, threshing corn, on the Sabbath. Jesus replied that King David once took the sacred showbread from the altar and gave it to his hungry followers. He adds that the Son of Man, a title he frequently uses to describe himself, is Lord of the Sabbath. Well, when I read that story in the Bible, not recently, but many times, Jesus said, "Oh, it's a wedding feast." Which, who was getting married? Was Jesus getting married? And if so, to whom? One of the clues that Agent Lee and Lincoln use in Holy Blood, Holy Grail to suggest that he married Mary Magdalene. Anyway, they end up with raised letters in this badly copied or poorly copied text from the New Testament. Some of the letters are not on the line. They're meant to be pulled out and decoded. And it says Dagobert the second. Can't remember how to say that in French. Roi et Sion, et ce trésor, et il est la mort. Fortunately, Fanthorpe translates it for us. To Dagobert the second king and to Sion, Sion. We spell it with a Z, but okay, it's Zion. Is this treasure, and he is there dead, or and it is death? At the start of the parchment, there is a curious triangle resembling the legs of the hanged man in the tarot. Okay. It could have a number of symbolic meanings. The three sides may represent the Trinity. The mark in the center could mean 1 in 3. There is a character outside the triangle which might either be a Greek omega, the last letter in the Greek alphabet, or the Arabic number 3, or M for Mary, depending upon the angle from which it is viewed. The triangle may be a stylized linear form of the Greek alpha, the first letter of the Greek alphabet. And when I look at it, I see a fish. It looks like a fish sign. Oh well, I don't see Fanthorpe mentioning that here. That's what it looks like to me. The combined religious symbolism might then represent God as the Trinity, 3 in 1 and 1 in 3, and as Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. As Jesus says in the book of John's Revelation, I am the Alpha and Omega, the first and the last. Okay, back to this book. The triangle could also be one of the keys to the decipherment of the curious text which follows. And here we get et in Arcadia ego. And in Arcadia, I, as in me, my, myself, and I. That's what I wanted to get to. Couldn't find it in the index. It is supposedly carved into a flat, a tombstone, but one that's lying flat, not standing up. That was someone smashed, apparently, so that other people could not interpret it, or perhaps in an attempt to find hidden treasure beneath it. The problem is that stone had Arcadia spelled A-R-K. And I've checked a million times. We spell Arcadia A-R-C-A-D-I-A. And so did the Romans. And that tombstone isn't old enough to be Greek, not in France. The person the stone would have been for was not Greek. She was French. So I think the carving on that stone was a much more recent forgery trying to mislead people. This book, I'm telling you, it looks like, oh gee, it's only a little over 200 pages, and it has photos and an index and appendices and stuff, but it's really heavy reading and it's really good. Now, Fanthorpe, of course, is biased as an English priest, but he really gives you tons of info. Tons and tons. Man, I wish I had slept well. I wish I had not overslept. Once again, Lionel Fanthorpe is not necessarily the best researcher because of his religious bias, but hey, he gives us the woo-woo stuff without going, meditate and and sit cross-legged and smoke dope and stuff. No, he's a scholar. Let's go back to page 100 to talk about alchemy. Page 100. Come on. Chapter 7, Magicians, Alchemists, and Men of Mystery. And here he quotes Tacitus. I'm irritated because he doesn't translate it. Who in the world is calling me? Come on, evil phone. Come on. It won't even let me hang up. If I just wave my hand several inches above the phone, it will open YouTube. But if I try to hang up on a spam phone call, oh no, we're not doing that for you. Ah, do you know the story of the person from Porlock who interrupted, what's his name? Oh, which poet was it? He was composing, oh Lord, it's too early. I didn't sleep well, but I know that poem and the poet like the back of my hand, and it's gone. The poem is Xanadu. It's by what's his name? Famous romantic poet. In Xanadu did Kublai Khan a something pleasure dome decree. Not Wordsworth. Oh well. I can actually look it up now that I've thought of the oh come on. I gotta wake up the mouse. Xanadu. Well anyway. Tip of my brain. Come on. Samuel Taylor Coleridge. In Xanadu did Kublai Khan a stately pleasure dome decree. And that was completed in 1797 and published in 1816. Well, some guy stopped by, knocked on the door, had the whole poem in his mind. He almost dreamed it. He knew every word of it, and he was just writing it down. And some guy knocked on the door and asked for directions to the town of Porlock. So Coleridge told him how to get there, went back and sat down to write the rest of the poem, and he'd forgotten it all. That's what these stupid spam phone calls are, the person from Porlock. Now my problem is, if I turn off the sound, I'll probably forget to turn it back on. So I'll miss phone calls, but at least I won't be interrupted by another phone call while I'm talking to you guys. My chat room is one of the best. You guys are so good to me and so smart. You usually come up with the names and info that I've forgotten and more information that I never heard of. Okay, chapter 7. Let's look at he's quoting Tacitus, a Roman historian. Eo magis praefulgebat, quod non videbatur. I have no idea what that says. I guess I could Google it. To add to the intriguing mysteries posed by the Rennes codes and ciphers are the even deeper mysteries of the enigmatic personalities who created them. Sir Francis Bacon. That's one of the figures who appeared to my husband, Philip K. Dick. Phil swore that while he was just lying in bed, trying to take a nap, but really awake, Sir Francis Bacon appeared sitting in a chair beside the bed. And by the way, there was no chair beside the bed. And talked with him. Well, in fact, all the figures who spoke to Phil, almost all, spoke in English, but here and there he picked up words in ancient Greek and Latin. Latin I can understand. Phil knew a little Latin from high school. Back in the day, they taught Latin in high school. But he was lost in Greek. Oh well. Sir Francis Bacon, in order to get anywhere near an answer to the watermark codes, yes, some of Saunier's papers were watermarked with weird symbols and codes. It is important to penetrate the historical mists obscuring the enigmatic and controversial figure of Sir Francis Bacon. He was born on January 22nd, 1561, and he died on April 9th, 1626, which makes him a contemporary of Poussin and both the Teniers. Okay, I gotta tell you who the Teniers are, and I forget. So, David Tenier, father and son, both named David. Let's look at 63 and 64. Come on. Flip, 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 flip. Okay, Poussin painted the Shepherds of Arcady, right? Poussin was by no means the only painter to be interested in the Et in Arcadia ego theme. There is, for example, a painting by Giovanni Francesco Giovanni Francesco Barbieri, who is nicknamed Guercino because of his unfortunate squint. Well, when your cat squints, that's kitty kisses, but okay, he squinted. One of his paintings is in the National Gallery in Rome. Barbieri's picture shows two shepherds looking at a skull with a hole above the left eye. Guercino lived from 1591 to 1666, which makes him a contemporary of Poussin. Robert Gavel, the art critic, writing in the Bulletin of Studies of the 17th Century in 1953, compared Barbieri's work to a late 16th century German engraving carrying the same inscription. This old German engraving shows the king of the New Zion dethroned after having started the Golden Age. This could be a reference to the shadowy and mysterious Priory of Zion. The king of the New Zion could well have been the title of the then master of the priory. The Golden Age may refer obliquely to the artist's secret geometry, what they believe to be the magical golden mean. Problem is, the Priory of Zion, or Sion with an S, is a 20th century hoax and very anti-Semitic. So once again, Fanthorpe is not the best scholar, but he's pretty good. Poussin himself is puzzling enough, but the Rennes code adds the name of Teniers, Teniers, and this is still more difficult to unravel. Two Flemish artists, father and son, bore the name of David Teniers or David Teniers. Both were contemporaries of Poussin, and both were born at Antwerp, Belgium. The older was a specialist in religious themes and homely subjects. The younger was very ambitious, and his art was highly commercialized. He specialized in cheerful, vivacious outdoor scenes. The elder's dates were 1582 to 1649, the younger's 1610 to 1690. Poussin was 57 years old. The elder Teniers died. The younger Teniers was 56 when Poussin died. Both Teniers were alive and active as artists, while Poussin was painting his various versions of the Shepherds of Arcadia. Yeah, they don't tell you that in the woo-woo books. Poussin made more than one painting of the Shepherds of Arcadia, and Father Bérenger Saunière bought one of them. Maybe he just liked the picture. Anyway, the Teniers apparently had a link with the Habsburgs, the Austrian dynasty of monarchs all over Europe, but, starting Austria. Skipping a bit, one thing is certain about the younger Teniers. His ambition was not an idle one. He rose to fame and fortune via his connection with the Habsburgs, but there was also in him something of Bérenger Saunière's drive, energy, and relentless purpose. Both men achieved what they did by stamina, persistence, and application. Both had enough courage and dynamism to turn ambition into fact. Both could also have been members of the enigmatic Priory of Sion, if it really exists, and their ruthless and unflagging determination to succeed may well be characteristic of members of the Priory in general. The Priory is a red herring, a false clue, a 20th century hoax. This does go back to times when, the Knights Templar had been wiped out. Those who survived went underground, went into hiding. In Portugal, they became the Knights of Christ. In Scotland, don't know what they called themselves, but they were definitely there with protection from the Scottish nobility. But you have the Masons and other Masons and Rosicrucians growing. And alchemy is a big deal, like Queen Elizabeth I's alchemist, Dr. John Dee. Oh, the Rolling Stones drummer. Well, Oswald, this is actually, as I mentioned earlier, the anniversary of something. I forgot what it was, and I read it from this book. August 24th. All right. August, somebody died. 24 in history. Come on. All right, I pulled out a cigarette and then I put it down to type. There it is, right here. Amelia Earhart embarked on her flight from Los Angeles to Newark, New Jersey. She, was famous for being a woman who flew an airplane. Oh, it's believed to be the date of the massive eruption of Mount Vesuvius that buried the cities of Pompeii, Herculaneum, and Oplantis and Stabili, killing a bunch of people. It's the day when workers started pouring concrete for the Panama Canal. Google isn't going to help me. Let's go back to the history of Rennes le Chateaux. Oh, I don't remember. I'm going to have to listen to my own podcast. This is the 24th. Oh dear. Les Cathar was burned on August 21. Oh, sorry, Howard. Phone not charging. Bummer. Let's see, I have been on for over an hour and I feel as if I just got started. Well, anyway, Francis Bacon, getting back to him, he wrote The New Atlantis. Let's skip a ways, and the most remarkable suggestion made about Francis Bacon is that he was not the Bacon's child at all, but Queen Elizabeth's. The story is based on the biliteral cipher found by Mrs. Gallup among Francis Bacon's works. But the evidence is not conclusive, and the affair needs to be studied cautiously. According to the encoded story, Lord Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester, who was for the murder of his wife, Amy Robsart, in 1560, had been secretly married to Queen Elizabeth in Lord Pembroke's house. Those present at this exclusive private ceremony included Sir William Cecil and the Bacons. The Queen, who, according to the story, had been Dudley's mistress for some time, was already pregnant when the wedding took place, and the child, Francis, was born in the following January. Lady Bacon was Elizabeth's chief lady-in-waiting and offered to take the boy and bring him up as her own son. Another secret marriage myth that might be true. Oh, see, the author, Lionel and Patricia Fanthorpe, do not shy away from the woo-woo, but they do look at the evidence and retain some skepticism. Before dismissing the story as total fantasy, it should be remembered that the Bacons were staunch Protestants, and that Sir Nicholas in particular had an almost obsessional hatred of Elizabeth's rival, Mary, Queen of Scots. Supposing for a moment that the story were true, if Elizabeth's marriage to Dudley and their subsequent production of a son had become known, the throne would have been rocked. To Protestants as fanatical as the Bacons, The consequences would have been unthinkable in an era of bloody religious controversy. In their scale of moral comparisons, concealing Francis's true parentage was as nothing when weighed against the dangers of accusing Elizabeth. So Francis Bacon might actually have been Elizabeth's son. And Elizabeth I was known as the Virgin Queen. Yeah. Well, so there's a lot more to the mystery than that there might have been buried treasure in Rennes le Chateaux. And by the way, before you think about showing up there with a pick and shovel, if there ever was a treasure at Rennes le Chateaux, Father Bérenger Saunière already found it and sold it and spent the money. The real treasure is knowledge. As Francis grew up, he became interested in psychic phenomena as well as in more orthodox philosophy and science. Macaulay's essay on Bacon, 1837, records how the young Francis went to a vault in St. James Park to study an unusual echo which sounded there. He studied the performances of traveling jugglers and conjurers to see whether they produced their startling results by trickery or by using genuinely supernormal powers. Woo! So, see, there's a lot more to the mystery than a priest who became suddenly wealthy. But that is what everyone seems to focus on. Not Fanthorpe. He goes all over the land, the history. And he doesn't go with a pick and shovel to dig up history. There's photographs. They aren't very well reproduced in this book. They're all too dark to really show up on the screen. Let's go to page 92, Curious Watermarks. I mentioned these earlier and discussed them. It's hard to get a good image on the screen. As we shall endeavor to show in chapter 7, that's the next chapter, magicians, alchemists, and men of mystery, Sir Francis Bacon and his brother could well have been among the elect group who knew more than most about the Rennes le Chateaux mystery. There is also some evidence that the Bacon brothers, in other words, Francis Bacon had a brother, or at least one, were among those initiated into the use of an enigmatic watermark code, a small sample of which is examined below. The Poussin and Teniers period, remember the paintings of the shepherds of Arcady? I'm almost awake now. Almost. Okay. The Poussin and Teniers period was a time of vigorous interaction between Britain and the continent. Ideas were crossing the channel in both directions, some openly and some secretly. One of the most intellectual and most secretive Englishmen of the time was Sir Francis Bacon, and his interest in codes and ciphers is well known. It seems likely that Bacon and his brother Anthony were deeply involved in at least one secret society which had European connections. It is also possible that their society was linked with the Rosicrucians and the Priory of Sion. The Priory of Sion keeps popping up. It's a 20th century hoax, but it might have had roots in things that did exist in the Middle Ages. The hoax, that is. It seems possible, even probable, that the Bacons used watermarks not only as symbols but as codes in which messages were communicated to members of whatever secret society they had created, revived, or adapted to their own purpose. The watermark symbols themselves go back much further than Elizabethan times. Figure A, the ellipse with a cross above it. See if I can show it to you. I don't know if you can see it. Goes back to the beginnings of the 14th century at least. Frankly, it looks like a Greek letter to me. Okay. The ellipse may be meant to represent an egg, the sealed mystery, the emblem of eternity, immortality, and resurrection. If it is, it ties up with the Latin acrostic ova, eggs, from the Shepherd Monument in the grounds of Chugsborough Hall, to be dealt with later in this chapter. Remember, I went through that earlier and my brain is just not giving it to me. Okay, the cross could well be the sign of the Templars, surmounting a circle representing the world. Figure B is also almost equally old and traceable at least as far back as the middle of the 14th century. Here, the circle and cross idea is repeated, but the cross has been rotated into a diagonal position. Okay, in other words, it's an X instead of a T. I have trouble. It's very small. It almost looks like a star. My hands hurt. I can't keep doing that, holding it up. It is now perhaps the emblem of St. Andrew. Look up the British flag. It has the cross of St. Andrew and of the other saint on it. My brain needs more coffee or something. George, St. Andrew and St. George. Okay. Here the circle and cross idea is repeated, but the cross is an X instead of a T, okay? It is now perhaps the emblem of St. Andrew, or it may be read with the upright of the original cross as a six-pointed star. Perhaps it is Davidic, the Star of Zion. The lines could be points of the compass, or it may even be part of some unknown secret alphabet. Okay, he goes on and on about these watermarks. Jeez. Oh, gosh. So Rennes le Chateaux, once again, has much more mystery to it than Father Béranger Saunière, the one who ignited the intense interest in and popularity of the Rennes le Chateaux mysteries. Again, when was this book published? (1992). So unfortunately, Phil never had the opportunity to read a scholarly work about Rennes le Chateaux. It has many secrets. And I'm pretty sure that you can find lectures by Lionel Fanthorpe on YouTube, so I'll spell out his name for you so you can search for him. Let me make sure I didn't do horrible typos. There you go. Francis Bacon was amazing. I started reading The New Atlantis, in which he proposes that America was, is, and will be Atlantis. I think he was really on to something there, Francis Bacon. But I got interrupted while reading it and never got back to it. I think it is in the Kindle folder on my computer somewhere. It was free. I should get back to it and read the whole thing. I am pretty well convinced that Atlantis was the capital, was an island in the Caribbean. The sea is basically between Florida and Mexico, and that they colonized the continent of America, but mostly South America, also Mexico. The ancient capital of Mexico, which is some miles away from Mexico City, but not that far, was designed as a man-made island in a man-made lake with concentric circles of land and water, and they must have been trying to copy the capital city on the island of Atlantis. It's been an hour and a half, and apparently no buffering. Amazing. Well, anyway, I've avoided ranting, but I am disgusted by what our fearless leaders have done in Afghanistan. Pull out the military, leave the civilians behind? Really? A 5-year-old knows better than to do that. Yeah, I was reading something recently about the Mount. Oh, it was a. Pardon me, I wasn't reading. It was a YouTube video that I shared on Facebook about what the Native Americans say about history. Apparently, the Mound Builders were very early and different people from what we call Cahokia and Hopewell. Hopewell was the name of a farmer who owned the land where the first, or some of the first artifacts were excavated. I've got to do something about this glare. I've got to put curtains. Oh well. Another project for me to do. It's hard when hobbling around on a broken hip, and after a year it isn't all that well healed. Anyway, I think rather than go into a rant about modern current events, I should go ahead and let Torah out and fix some breakfast and stuff like that. I can't I can recommend this book, but it won't. It's well written and lovely to read, but man, it is densely packed with information, most of it good. Okay, I'll hold it up a little longer. Secrets of Rennes le Chateaux by Lionel and Patricia Fanthorpe. It's an amazing book. And it doesn't cost that much. It's paperback. It's a great book. Okay, now I'll save my rant for when I'm awake again in the middle of the night. I'm ready to rant about current events. Okay, so let's see. There were one more thing about Native Americans. They say that they originated here in the Americas, and some of their people migrated to Siberia. They didn't come from Siberia. They also have histories, oral histories. We call them myths and legends of coming from Europe and even going to Europe and Africa and Asia on boats. The ancient seas were not barriers to migration, they were the highways of their time. And remember Kon-Tiki, Thor Heyerdahl showed that you could build a raft out of a bunch of balsa wood and sail all over the Pacific, and he did pretty much the same thing in the Atlantic to show that Egyptians could have traveled back and forth to the Americas. But you see, white European men did the early archaeology and they just weren't having it. These ancient dark-skinned people couldn't possibly be intelligent, and their descendants couldn't possibly know their own history because they weren't white male Europeans. Uh-huh. And you think there's racism now? Haha. Even in the 1800s, women had very few rights. Very few. A woman could not divorce a husband just because he beat the crap out of her. She had to prove he was cheating on her, and even then, she'd walk away from the marriage with very little. All right, I just saw something out the window, but my peripheral vision didn't show me what it was. I think it was out on the street, not in my yard. Okay. Well, we gave Europeans gave the Native Americans smallpox, but the Native Americans gave the Europeans syphilis. So, yeah, some of those not really ancient, medieval and Renaissance plagues went both ways. From about 1492 to even into modern times, at least the 1800s. Oh, and then there was right after World War I, the 1917 and 18, and actually went on for several years, the Spanish flu. We don't know where it came from, but it was American servicemen who first came down with it. Killed millions. Well, in ancient medieval times, when trade with China began, the rats would climb onto the ships and they were carrying fleas, and the fleas and the rats were carrying the Black Plague. It came from China, where people had pretty high resistance to it, to Europe, where millions died because they didn't have immunity. It's been going on for ages. So whenever disconnected populations get together, there's going to be some really adjustments to be made by our bodies to become immune to new and interesting diseases. Oh, we have been. There were plagues in ancient Rome. There were plagues in ancient Egypt and ancient Israel, and all over the world from before. We don't have a year zero, but from BC, or if you insist BCE, before the Common Era. I mean, when Moses was leading the people out of Egypt, the Egyptians were struck down by a plague. It's been happening. Some of the major plagues of Europe apparently wiped out half the population of the entire continent. There's plagues in Africa today that are, well, like Ebola, much worse than another flu virus like corona. Now, we work very hard to keep people alive when they're ill or injured. I think that's a good thing, but it allows the survival of people who are not immune to various infections. But even so, the humanitarian in me says go for it. Like Nostradamus, Michel de Notre Dame. Yeah, we look at his writings and try to decipher his prophecies, but his main job was as a plague doctor. And the critics will tell you, oh, but he didn't save his own family. Well, yeah, he wasn't there. When they became ill, he was out treating other people. So, of course, he couldn't save them. He wasn't there. He was a darn good plague doctor, he said. Toss everything outside in the sunshine, beat the rugs, wash your laundry, get fresh air and sunshine. And now they're saying, well, he chose to treat patients who weren't very ill, so of course he was successful. Well, early treatment is the best way to go. And at a certain point, there's no hope anyway. But I can tell you that as his practices became known, people were cleaning their houses, washing their laundry, getting fresh air and sunshine, and it was working. I don't suggest that you become obsessive about hygiene and sanitation and, making your whole house spick and span and germ free. It's a trade off. You want to be clean as reasonably possible. Yourself, your house, your bedding, your clothing. But if you are never exposed to any germs, you're just asking for catastrophe. When your immune system does encounter a virus or a bacterium, because it has no experience in dealing with such things. So, moderation, but yeah, as clean as possible without turning your whole house into an antiseptic operating room. Oh, germaphobes, yeah. What I think about is a good chatter, too. Yeah, I'm not terribly afraid of germs, but there are some slimy things that I won't touch. I do have sanitary wipes and hand sanitizer, but I don't go overboard with it. I'll tell you, if you have those hand wipes, sanitary wipes, they're wonderful for cleaning the countertops in your kitchen and your bathroom. That's things that you really want to sanitize, more so than the other rooms of your house. So we teach our immune systems to fight for us by being exposed to a little dirt here and there, especially when we're children. Children love to play in the dirt and in the sandbox and so forth. That's a good thing. But don't go out of your way. For example, now we have vaccinations for chickenpox and measles and so forth. We didn't have them when I was very young. And parents deliberately exposed their children to chickenpox for a good reason. It gave you immunity to smallpox. And smallpox is incredibly infectious and Why am I not thinking of the word? You can die from it. It's one of the plagues that swept through Europe and the Americas and Africa and so forth, and Asia. It makes blisters all over your body and a high fever, and it's really nasty. It's deadly. That's the word. Smallpox is infectious and deadly. But if you had chicken pox, you had immunity to smallpox. Now, when I was in 5th grade, so I'm trying to think, 10 years old, we got vaccinations for smallpox at school for free. They don't tell you that when they demand that you get your children vaccinated to go to school. The vaccinations used to be free. Now you have to pay for them. Well, anyway, we've wiped out small. It might exist somewhere, but we haven't seen cases of smallpox, so they don't even vaccinate you for it. But they do vaccinate you for chickenpox, and that's probably just as good. I'm not anti-vax. I simply don't take the flu shot. I don't need it, and I'm against unnecessary medical procedures. I don't need it. I had the flu once in January of 1969. I had a runny nose. People were dying of that swine flu, we called it. Some people called it the Asian flu, but we were pretty sure it started in pigs, in swine. Anyway, I wasn't that ill, and I haven't had the flu since then. Here and there I've had a runny nose, but I don't think it was the flu. It was probably just a head cold. Colds and flu are quite similar, but colds are not deadly. Anyway, yeah, we've traded plagues back and forth all over the world for thousands of years. And you can't stop a virus. You can make it less deadly. You can slow down how fast it spreads, but you'll never get rid of it. As soon as we find something that kills a virus, it will mutate and become immune to it, just like we become immune to diseases. If I ever get an interview with God, I'm going to ask him, why the hell did you invent viruses? Were you trying to kill us all? He'll probably smack me down the way he did Job. Where were you when I laid the foundations and all that stuff? Where was I when he created everything? But I really want to know. Well, getting chicken pox is not good. I had it as a very young child, an infant. I had shingles, which is the reappearance of the symptoms. I think I was 12 at the time. I'm thinking, no, I was either 14 or 15. 14, I think. You see, once you've had chickenpox, the virus will hide in among your nerve cells and not cause symptoms. But if you're under extreme stress, it can reappear as blisters that follow the line of one of your nerves. In my case, it was the sciatic nerve from the small of my back down the around and down my leg. And while I was convalescing with with shingles, my baby sister got the chicken pox, almost certainly from my shingles. They try to tell you it isn't the same virus, but yeah, well, viruses mutate. It's the same virus. People who get the shingles either have had chicken pox or were exposed to it. The chicken pox vaccine doesn't last a lifetime, but really, having the chicken pox doesn't necessarily mean you won't get those blisters again, because they call it shingles. And it's the same thing. I don't know how we got off on plagues, but okay. Oh, I guess because Nostradamus was a plague doctor. Hi, Torah. Let's turn that off. Yeah, you can get a shingles vaccine too. It's probably a good thing. But I think I should get the MMR. I had the measles a couple years ago, but then there's mumps and rubella. And who knows, the measles I had might have been rubella, which is the fancy name for German measles. I wouldn't want to get the mumps, but mostly men don't want to get the mumps. It quite often hits their nether parts. Very painful and potentially deadly for men. When I had mumps as a child, my jaw hurt so bad. There was swelling around my jaw. Oh, man. Anyway, nothing lasts forever. And if you live long enough, you'll get diseases again. The question is, can your immune system handle it? Okay, now I really gotta go. In more ways than one. Let's wake up the mouse. I'll catch you all later. I'm not going to disturb the sleeping Torah to have her greet you. She greeted you early on in this episode. Yeah, thank you. What I think about all of you. Have a wonderful day, and try not to watch too much of the news. It's disgusting. But if I rant about it, it will be on a separate video. See you all later.